Welcome to Pique Your Interest, your go-to podcast for all things mortgage and real estate. Hosted by Tanner Greenwald and Tim Malaskis. We bring you expert insights to help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Tim, and today we are going to talk about what I think is probably the most powerful loan out there, the VA loan. Right here in Maryland, we've got the Naval Academy and Fort Meade, and we're not too far from, DC bases, Joint Air Force Base Andrews, and, we're not too far from Fort Detrick. So there's a lot going on here in this area, and, we do an awful lot of VA business as a result of that. So I want to talk a little bit about VA loans, how they work, and, the benefits to the buyers, and also, want to speak directly to real estate agents and talk to you about why VA loans are probably better than you think that they are. So real estate agents, listen up closely. The first thing, there's three main benefits to doing a VA loan. If you are a veteran, keep in mind, this is something that you have earned. It's not, it's not like qualifying for other loan programs. This is something that, through the service that you have, given this country, you have the ability to get a VA loan, and it's pretty awesome. And, certainly thank you for your service. Three main things here that I'd say make VA loans better than some other loan types. First of all, the 0% down payment. That's something that I think most people know about VA loans. No down payment requirement. Now, you can put money down if you want to, but you're not required to. So, certainly one of the benefits there would be not having a down payment. There's also no monthly mortgage insurance. And so, other loan types that have less than 20% down, and even some loans that do have 20% down still come with mortgage insurance, but VA loans do not come with mortgage insurance. And then thirdly, you get a really great rate. And so, the reason you get a great rate is because VA loans are, backed by the federal government. And that's something that makes lenders feel comfortable. It's something, when there's less risk, then you get a better interest rate. And that's just how the mortgage world works. So, the confidence that lenders have in the federal government backing these loans means lower interest rates to the consumer, which is fantastic. It's not completely free. There's a funding fee. If you are not exempt from the funding fee as a result of, injuries sustained during your service, you have some kind of funding fee. But quite honestly, most of the time people just take that funding fee and roll it into their loan. It's not, there aren't many closing costs in the mortgage world for a purchase that you're able to roll into a mortgage, but the VA funding fee is one of them. So even though you have the funding fee, most people decide to roll it into their loan, and it's not something that you pay out of pocket most of the time. That certainly makes it a little more affordable as well. Other things that we want to talk about today are, let's just bust the stigma for listing agents. You receive an offer on a house, it's a VA offer, and you're thinking, oh man, I don't want to accept this offer because it's a VA loan. The question is why? Why would a VA loan be any worse than any other type of financing? And I'd argue it's not. Just because it's 0% financing, you see the offer on the letter, and you see the numbers in the contract or on the pre-approval letter, and, the loan amount is the same as the offer price, or maybe even higher because of that funding fee. It's not because people getting a VA loan can't afford to have a down payment. Many times they could if they chose to. But again, this is something that, they have earned the ability to not have a down payment. And a lot of people take advantage of that. Cash is king, and a lot of people like having that cash, in the bank, save it for a rainy day kind of thing. It's nice to have money in the bank when you own a house. So a lot of people who have the ability to get VA loans do not have a down payment, simply for that reason. They like having the cash in the bank account, and it's not because they can't afford it. It's not because they can't put a down payment down. They just have earned the right not to, and they're taking advantage of that. And then the other thing that I hear from listing agents is that, it's a VA appraiser coming out to the property. They're going to flag all the things, and it's not really as bad as you might think that it is. It's not an actual home inspection. It's a VA appraiser going out to the property, and they're just looking out for the health, safety, and security of the future occupant. And, as long as the house is in decent shape, VA appraisers are probably going to pass that house, and you're probably not going to experience any kind of any kind of setback as a result of that. One other thing about VA loans and appraisals and things like that is, one advantage that you would have as a listing agent is when an appraiser is having a hard time with value, when they're looking at, comparable sales, they've come to, your property, they've, taken measurements and pictures, and they're trying to come up with what they think the fair market value is. If they're having trouble, there's something called the Tidewater Initiative, and it's something that the VA appraiser has to do if they don't believe they're going to be able to meet the value of the sales price. So essentially what they do is they alert the lender, hey, I'm having a problem justifying this value. Can you reach out to, the real estate agents involved in this contract and say, hey, can you supply some, comparable sales to me that help me get to that value, because I'm just not seeing it. So what do you see, or what do you know that I don't see or I don't know? As opposed to like an FHA or a conventional appraisal, where if the appraiser is having problems with value, it just comes in low and there's no heads up. At least with VA, you have that heads up through the Tidewater Initiative. Another nice thing about VA loans is there's, seller concessions are allowed. Generally the rule is 4%. Closing cost help from the seller. The unique thing about VA loans is that, the way that the guidelines are worded is you could have the seller pay all of your closing costs and up to 4% of the sales price for other things, for things like, buying down the rate or paying off a debt or things like that. So it's certainly, it's again, a benefit you have earned, and it's very, very consumer friendly in that sense. You could have all the closing costs paid. You can get a little bit more on top of that, which is really nice. So I'd say, VA loans aren't as scary as you might think that they are from the listing side. Certainly as a buyer, it's not a scary thing. It's a great thing. As a lender, as somebody who's been in the business for a really long time, I've done a lot of VA loans. I've been very fortunate to become referral partners with either people who were former military, or their spouses were military, or they've just gotten into this niche where they work with a lot of military folks, and it's great. I mean, it's for the most part, it's, very stable income, stable employment, money saved in the bank. It's good credit. It's all the things that you're looking for, from a lending perspective. It's what we're looking for. So it's not this thing that you should shy away from. You should embrace VA loans and VA buyers and, VA offers. I think, it's the least that we could do. It's, it's a service that they've rendered to this country. It's something that they've earned, and it's something that we should all keep in mind as we work toward helping these people achieve home ownership. Let's not exclude people just because they have a VA offer. So if you have any questions, or there's anything that comes up, or you just want to talk a little bit further about VA loans, certainly let me know. I would consider myself an expert in the topic. I think I've done an awful lot of VA loans over the years, and so I've got some experience and some real life stories we could talk about. Why VA is probably not as scary as you may think that it is. Thanks for joining me today. Again, reach out, any questions that you have. I'm here to help, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.